about it.
I want to post about how great this coffee is, but I can't think of a funny way to say it.
This post is like a page long. How do I shorten this?
Just take out all the vowels.
It'll still be like
Seriously.
a page.
Dude, you gonna eat those or just take pictures?
Who's the cutest baby on the internet?
Is this guy always on vacation?
Costa Rica vacay. Did you just like my post about my uncle dying?
Office pic.
No.
Hold still. I'm vining you.
Why are you Instagramming lamps?
How did he get so many followers? He's a dentist.
Hey guys, you on Twitter? Follow me. We just got 2 retweets.
Sometimes I want to move to another country where I wouldn't have to deal with this stuff.
Isso faz parecer que eu tô me achando?
Hashtag photo of the day.
Hashtag I quit. Just kidding.
Hashtag multitasking.
Hashtag squirmworm.
Hashtag road trip dudes. Not while you're driving, man.
Hashtag YOLOI.
Is anybody even gonna read this?
Bestie.
Coffee friends. Mini bagels.
Unsubscribe.
What's up, Facebook?
Oh, look at my new shoes. Unfollow.
I love coffee.
We're going viral.
I don't care about your dog. I don't care about your lunch.
Meu Archie.
Nobody cares about your tree pics.
Driving selfie.
Glaciers.
Desert.
Third world.
Nobody cares.
I'm gonna hide all of you.
Dude, I made the popular page.
So perhaps you've seen or known somebody to use social media in this manner, but how are most of these people using it? Look at the new shoes I bought. Look at the vacation I went on. Look at the friends that I have. Look at how much fun I'm having. Is that realistic to life? No, it's not really at all. So I came across this verse, James 3:16, that says, "For where envy and self-seeking exist, confusion and every evil thing is there." Wherever selfishness thrives, the Bible tells me that every evil thing can come in. Do you think it's by chance that we actually have this device that is literally used in a selfish manner at the end of time? Do you think that's by random chance that Satan has been using it or pushing his technology at us? The Bible is full of wisdom that is so applicable today. You know, James 3:16 sounds like another 3:16. What's the other 3:16? Right? 100% of the opposite. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. It's the opposite of this. Where selfishness exists, every evil manner is there. John 5:30 says, Jesus himself said, "I seek not my own will, but the will of the Father which has sent me." You know, Jesus is full of examples where he was constantly talking about denying self. Luke 9:23 says, "If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." Jesus wasn't self-seeking at all. Even when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane, he's praying for God to take away this cup from him. And he says, "Not as I will, but as you will, God." He was constantly focused on, "God, what do you want me to do? I will do whatever you want me to do." Philippians 2:3-4 gives us really great advice in the selfishness area. "Do nothing for rivalry or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but to the interests of others." You see, I find it very interesting that as we get to the end of the world, I truly believe that God has a special purpose for us in the Adventist church. I believe that there will be a day when the wheat and the tares grow up together. Are you following me? You are either a full follower of Christ or you are a full follower of Satan. There is no middle ground in that last day people. And so I find it very important, literally very important, to not allow little things to get into our lives that make us focus on ourselves. Here's a couple of interesting facts for you. Did you realize that there's 600 million more people who own a mobile phone compared to those that own a toothbrush? More people care about the technology than they do their own dental hygiene in the world. I find this disturbing about our human race. Research reveals that there's about 4.8 billion mobile users, but only 4.2 billion people have a toothbrush. So what is all this this focusing on all this internet doing to us. Here's a little video clip that's going to illustrate how we actually learn. In fact, there's a process that we learn, how we transfer information from the short-term memory to the long-term memory. And all of this distraction, us constantly paying attention to our phones, it's always buzzing, we're in conversation, we're talking to people, but we're checking our emails. What is all of this doing to our brains? This little video is going to talk about.
So you're reading an article online when you get an instant message with a link to a funny photo, which of course you have to share. And now you're reading your Facebook news wall, which sends you to a video of a panda bear attacking a kid. And now you're reading Wikipedia to learn everything you can about the violent behavior of panda bears. And this is what 3 minutes on the internet can be like. We live like this all the time, and it has to have some kind of effect on us.
The net is making us more superficial as thinkers.
That is Nicholas Carr. He is the author of The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. To understand this whole thing better, we need to go way back in time, to say, like, the prehistoric age.
You wanted to know everything going on around you, because the more you knew about your surroundings, the less likely you were to get attacked by a predator. And there's even evidence that our brains release some dopamine, pleasure-producing neurotransmitter chemical, to reward us for seeking out and finding new information.
So getting distracted felt good and helped us stay alive. But the problem is that nowadays, predators aren't much of an issue, but we still have the same brains. And also, there's the internet, which is...
It's an incredibly information-rich environment that the net creates for us, and that's why we use it so much. I mean, sounds, pictures, words, text. And what this tends to do is promote a sort of compulsive behavior in which we're constantly checking our smartphone, constantly glancing at our email inbox. We're kind of living in this perpetual state of distraction and interruption.
Which is dangerous because...
that mode of thinking crowds out the more contemplative, calmer modes of thinking.
And that focused, calm thinking is actually how we learn. It's a process called memory consolidation.
And that means the transfer of information from our short-term working memory to our long-term memory. And it's through moving information from your working memory to your long-term memory that you create connections between that information and everything else you know.
So you've got this awesome life-changing piece of information in your short-term memory, but then you hear that email ding and poof, there it goes. That email takes its place and you never get a chance to learn anything, all because of one distraction.
So attention is the key, and if we lose control of our attention or are constantly dividing our attention, then we don't really enjoy that consolidation process.
But I can hear it now. Someone out there is saying, what does learning matter if all the information in the world is just a Google search away? Well...
that is kind of shortchanging our intellects. If that's the way you're using your mind, just kind of searching very quickly and finding information and then forgetting it very quickly, you're never building knowledge. You're kind of thinking like a computer.
Which means that our very humanity is at stake. And it would be a shame if we all got assimilated because, well, humanity is pretty neat.
I really believe that if you look at the great monuments of culture, they come from people who are able to pay attention, who control their mind. That's what allows us to think in the highest terms, and think conceptually, think critically, think in some very creative ways.
And it's this kind of thinking that's at risk, being eroded one cute cat video at a time. Don't get us wrong, the internet is good for lots of things, and it should be celebrated. But the best thing we can do for our minds is to find some time every day to unplug, calm down, and focus on one thing at a time. Your email, and those cats, will be here when you get back.
So that's basically how social media, internet usage, and all that is actually starting to rewire our brains. Did you know that we're actually becoming surface skimmers? We used to read. When you wanted to find a topic, you wanted to learn about something, you had to really dig. And you had to get to the bottom of it, read lots of information. You know what we do today? We read bullet point, right? Am I right? You kind of read the little short pages. Everything's getting shorter and shorter. Our attention span is getting smaller and smaller. You know, they say that a goldfish has an attention span of about 9 seconds, and now the human race has the attention span of about 8 seconds. Lovely. We have less than a goldfish. Isn't that interesting? So we are literally rewiring our brains to have attention problems. And we're not being able to really focus if we're training our brains like this. So what is actually this whole social media doing to our relationships? So this next video clip that I'm going to show you is from a doctor from UCLA, and he's talking about the usage of social media and how it's actually reshaping our brains.
Social media is a fascinating new human phenomenon, and when we look at it deeply from a brain point of view, when we start with the foundation that the brain is actually the social organ of the body, we can understand why social media and brain functions would go hand in hand. That is, the reason social media took off in this last 10 years is because the brain is social and people really want to connect with each other. And then, when social media was designed and keeps on creating itself, then the social media, in fact, is going to be shaping the brain so that the brain is responsive to culture. And in one of our research centers at UCLA, what we're able to show is that cultural experiences, that is, messages sent out in society that are mediated through communication, either one-on-one or mass media communication, actually shape the actual structure of the brain. And so it's a two-way street. The brain created social media, and social media shapes the brain.
So what he's kind of saying about this messages sent out in society over collectively sent out is if everybody's watching and listening and reading the same articles, what that's doing is having a profound effect on society as a whole. So if they want to reshape society, they can keep pumping the same type of messages out there, and it will actually reshape everybody's understanding of whatever the topic is. So we find that social media is very active. That's why President Trump was under the fire or under the gun for people saying he manipulated social media through the Russian use of it, and they manipulated people into voting for him and all sorts of stuff. I believe that these kind of things are very real. They are using social media to really get people in one camp or the other, and it's heavily used. So this particular guy, he's the former president, Sean Parker, of Facebook. So he's not Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg's the CEO, but he's the former president. He was part of the original team that helped design Facebook. And he's actually left Facebook because he is very vocal now about how damaging Facebook is to society. And they go on CNN, they go all over the place talking about actually they designed it to be damaging, they know it's damaging, and he feels terrible that they put it out in society knowing what it was going to do to everybody. Listen to just a little bit of him talking about this.
I had these people who would come up to me and they would say, you know, I'm not on social media. And I would say, okay, you know, you will be. And then they would say, no, I value my real life interactions, I value the moment, I value presence, and I value intimacy. And I would say, well, you're a conscientious objector, that's okay. You don't have to participate, but you know, we'll get you eventually. and like, I don't know if I really understood the consequences of what I was saying. Because the unintended consequences of a network when it grows to 1 billion or 2 billion people, and it literally changes your relationship with society, with each other, with it probably interferes with productivity in weird ways. God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains. You know, if the thought process that went into building these applications, Facebook being the first of them to really understand it, that thought process was all about how do we consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible. And that means that we need to sort of give you a little dopamine hit every once in a while because someone liked or commented on a photo or a post or whatever. And that's going to get you to contribute more content, and that's going to get you, you know, more likes and comments. I mean, it's a social validation feedback loop that it's like it's exactly the kind of thing that that a hacker like myself would come up with, because you're exploiting a vulnerability in human.
He says human psychology, he's exploiting the vulnerability of us. We all want to be liked. So when they came up with the idea of the like button, do you know what that really is doing? All of us want to be liked. All of us. That's just a human nature. And so all of a sudden, when you post something, and those of you that have posted things on Instagram or Facebook, you guys can attest to this, right? Have you posted something and then it's like you check it to see how many likes are on there? You keep looking, how many people really liked it? And if nobody likes it, how do you feel? What, did I post this wrong? Did I not say something funny? Maybe I should have posted a different picture, right? Have you ever done this? Right? Because what they're effectively doing is when we get the like, we get a release of dopamine in the brain. And dopamine is a very addictive pleasure center of our brain that we go, and it makes us feel good. And so just like B.F. Skinner, if you guys are, those of you that are in psychology, right? You know how the mouse is pressing the button, right? Did you know that all of this is built in the same way that they built gambling systems? You see, when somebody's pressing the lever of the gambling, if they don't know when they're going to win, they don't know when that win is going to happen, then all of a sudden it makes you come back to the lever more. So what happens is when you post something, you don't know if people are going to like it, it makes you come back to the lever more to see how much time or how many people actually liked it. And what Facebook does is they can record how much time you're actually watching their device, and then they go to the advertisers and they say, this person spends 4 hours a day on their phone looking at their screen, advertisement is worth this much. That's what they're doing. So that's how they're making billions and billions of dollars, because they want to suck up as much time as they humanly can with you staring at these devices. They created them to be addictive on purpose, and they knew they were doing it. So this particular gentleman is one of the guys, the social engineers who actually engineered it. So he's sort of the brains that developed Facebook. He too has left Facebook and has come out in CNN and said, I am so sorry what I did, because we are ruining society. And here he is kind of talking about this publicly a little bit.
What I was talking about was, the question was, what do you think the long-term effects of social media in general are? And unfortunately what happened was, I think it's easy to characterize what I said just as a Facebook specific thing, because I worked there and I was a key part of growing it. The reality of what I was...
Explain what you said at the time.
So what I said was, I think the tools that have been created today are starting to erode the social fabric of how society works. And what I meant by that is the following thing. Today we live in a world now where it is easy to confuse truth and popularity. And you can use money to amplify whatever you believe and get people to believe that what is popular is now truthful and what is not popular may not be truthful. Joe and I, for example, we've been on the other side of climate for a long time, right? And the reality is now I can take money and I can use that through all of these social media systems that exist to hundreds of millions of people, and I can convince all of Joe's friends and everybody like him of my opinion in very subtle and small ways. And he can do the same to me. We can do that about vaccines. We can do that about gay rights. We can do that about bathroom laws. We can do that about Roy Moore. And so I think the question we have to ask ourselves is, how do we live in a world where this is now possible? And
so it was about that, but just so I understand, was it because I read and watched parts of what you were talking about. Part of it seemed to me about the ability to pay to manipulate people's thoughts. The other seemed to me to be this sort of ADD society with which this sort of liking and everything else has created this sort of feedback loop that you compared to drugs.
We know for a fact that what all of these systems do, every single one, is it exploits our own natural tendencies in human beings to get and want feedback. And that feedback, chemically speaking, is the release of dopamine in your brain. And so what these feedback loops do, and they exist everywhere, in Call of Duty, in other video games, in...
So he goes through kind of a list and talks a little bit about it. I'm going to cut it short here just for the sake of time. But I find it very interesting. You guys can type this up on the internet, and there is a lot of information on YouTube. If you want to look at more of what these guys say, pay attention to these two gentlemen here, and there's a couple other guys that talk about it, and they really get in the nitty-gritty of the psychology of what went behind designing these things, and they did it really knowing what it was going to do. They did a study at UCLA on teens, and they wanted to know, everybody plays with Instagram. Anybody in here use Instagram? Okay, so they did a specific study. Are you more likely to pick a photo just because everybody else likes it? And so they were testing this, and they wanted to see if you were influenced by all kinds of different things. So they took 32 teenagers, brought them into UCLA, put them in an fMRI machine, and they this is an fMRI machine. It's like a big magnet, and you have a lot of iron in your hemoglobin in your blood. And so what it does is it follows around where the blood goes in your brain, and then it can tell what parts of the brain is active. It's just a big giant magnet, basically, and they can map the brain and what's going on there. And so they made a fake Instagram account, and they showed people two pictures that are exactly the same. There is no difference between these two pictures except for one tiny little bit. Does anybody notice? The likes, right? When you look at a picture, what's the first thing you really look at? You go down, you look at the likes. You go down, you look at the likes. A lot of people do that. And so they were finding that time and time again, not respecting what the picture was taken of, if they had two pictures, more people would choose it just because there was a lot of likes on it. If there was no likes on it, they would not choose the picture. And they found this to be true with even neutral photos like friends and food, and then they used risky photos such as cigarettes and alcohol, and they found time and time again, if everybody was liking that photo, you were more likely to like the photo as well and choose it. And so that tells me, you've all probably seen those friends that are out there partying, and they got their alcohol pictures, and they're out there in the clubs and stuff like this, and everybody's liking them, right? It matters what people are posting, and it matters who your friends are, because ultimately we will engage in that activity if we are liking their photos and looking into it. I'm going to skip through a couple of things here just for the sake of time, because I kind of have a few other slides that I really want to get to. Facebook adds 500,000 new users every single day. That's 6 new profiles every single second. That's how many new people are signing up for Facebook. It's just growing and growing and growing. They believe that about 2/3 of the world soon will be on Facebook, which is mind-boggling. 68% of all the people online in the U.S. adults visit Facebook at least once a month. And the average number of friends that people have is about 338. So is there anyone in here that has about that many friends? No? Seriously? Remember, it's the Sabbath. You got to tell the truth. Facebook friends. Do you have more than 300? Okay, I have a few thousand. Do I have a few thousand? Do I really have a few thousand? I don't even know. Probably 10% of them, right? Here's the issue. We believe that we are actually more connected to each other because of this thing called Facebook. And it's like everybody now has all these friends. You can talk to people around the world. You can talk to people in your childhood. You can talk to people that you haven't seen in years. You can reconnect. So we feel more connected together. But guess what? Have you ever heard of a Gallup poll? Do you know what a Gallup poll is? They do studies out in the United States on all sorts of different topics and stuff like this. They did a Gallup poll in 1990 to 2001, how many people actually had real friends. And that meant how many people could you count as a real friend? Someone that's going to show up at your house, you get into a car accident, they're going to make food for you, you get a divorce or marriage problems, who's going to show up and help your marriage out? That kind of a friend. 9 to 10 people is basically the average that people had in 1990 and 2001. Now, we hadn't invented Facebook yet. They redid the study. How many friends do you think we have today? 1, 2. Why would you think that? Because aren't we so much more connected to each other? I mean, we can talk to people around the world, right? You're so correct. They redid the study, and they found that the average mean of people was actually 4. So literally in only 10 years, we went from having about 10 people that we could really truly call a friend down to 4. We are becoming more and more and more disconnected to each other. And you know why I find that very interesting? Because when I read my Bible, and Jesus mentions in Matthew 24, verse 12, he says, because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. And do you know what, brothers and sisters? We actually see this happening today. We are becoming colder and colder as a society. And you know what I find is even more interesting? God is promising to do his greatest work in the weakest of the weakest generation on this planet. Isn't that amazing? As the world gravitates more and more towards this iniquity and coldness, God will produce a people that reflect his character completely. I do believe it. Listen to what Mrs. White says in Gospel Workers, page 185. Perhaps you have heard this verse or heard this before. In the work of many ministers, there is too much sermonizing and too little heart-to-heart work. Do you realize that we in the Adventist Church, we have sermons coming out our ears? We have information like you would not believe. I mean, there is sermons on everything. When I went to the GC, any of you guys go to the GC session last 2015? I was blown away at how many ministries we had. I mean, it was like ministries how to, make your dog vegan. Ministries how to, it was just like, what? There are so many crazy ministries I've never even heard of. We have sermons coming out our ears, but listen to what Mrs. White says. There is too much sermonizing and too little heart-to-heart work. There is need of personal labor for the souls. In Christ-like sympathy, the minister should come close to men individually and seek to awaken their interest in the great things of eternal life. Their hearts may be as the beaten highway. Apparently, it may be a useless effort to present the Savior to them. But while logic may fail to move and argument powerless to convince, the love of Christ revealed in personal ministry may soften the stony heart so that the seeds of truth may take root. Do you realize that the best way to reach someone heart to heart is literally going and spending time with them, building that relationship? That's why I love the topic of gardening, because, my brother's a real big into gardening. And he actually works at Daystar, and he works in their little farming program. And he began our ministry with us. And it was really funny because we've always kind of had a sort of start work at 8 or 9. We've kind of fluctuated between those two times, which is pretty easy to start work at 9 o'clock. And my brother would always show up late. And he would always show up really super dirty. I was like, what are you doing? You just came from your house. Why do you have like dirt under your fingernails? He would literally drive to work and he would stop by people's houses that had trees and he would randomly trim their fruit trees and he would like help them out and he would like talk with them and say, hey, you need to do this and this and this. He just had gardening in his blood. But it literally began conversations with people. And you know what? When you're a gardener, do you literally just go around and cast seed wherever you want to? Like, hey, I've got these peach trees. I'm going to just throw them on the ground right here, right? No. You have to till the soil. You have to know what grows there, what season it grows in. You can't just plant any time of the year. There's a special time to plant there. All those things are representative of how we share the gospel. You cannot just walk around and just throw seeds of truth just because they're seeds of truth. Right? Does that make sense? You have to cultivate the heart of the person. That's why it's important not to just knock on the door, literally hand somebody a piece of information, good luck, read it, I'll see you later, right? You want to have a conversation with them. You want to get to know them. Hey, can I come back? Hey, here's my number. If you have a question about this material, call me. That's building the soil and how to share the gospel. Mr. Denzel Washington was asked the question, what do we do with social media? Listen to how he answers this question.
Turn it off. That's what I would say. It's hard for young people now because they're hooked. They're addicted. If you don't think you're addicted, and I'm talking about anyone, from the highest to the lowest, if you don't think you're addicted, then see if you can turn it off for a week. It got quiet in here, didn't it? Didn't it get real quiet? It's a tool. So we should use it. God has blessed us with free will. Now it's free will magnified, free will on steroids. You're free to go in any direction you want. It will allow you, and it's not the enemy. It's just a reflection of our own free will. You know? And we all want to be liked. But now we want to be liked by 16 million. And will now some of us do anything to be liked. We used to do anything to be liked, but it was by the person in front of you. Now it's to be liked by 16 million people that you don't know. We have to ask ourselves, what is the long term if not too?
So he's actually saying some very good information. I'm usually pretty hard on celebrities, but when I saw this clip, I was like, he's actually a very outspoken Christian. Did you guys know that? He reads the book of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John tons of times, always reads them. And when we first started this ministry, we actually used to have a clip of Denzel Washington. How he got his first breaking role was he played in a movie called Glory, and he played a slave during the Civil War. If you guys remember the movie, it was a long time ago. And he was being interviewed on 60 Minutes, and the guy came up to him, and he won an Oscar for it, or won a nomination. I can't remember if he actually won an Oscar for it. And so the guy asked him, like, how did you play this slave character so well? I mean, you were just amazing. And you know what Denzel Washington answered? I got on my hands and knees and I prayed to the spirit of the dead slaves. And when the spirit came into me, I got up and I acted that scene. And I could not have written that down. The things that were coming out of my mouth, I could not write it down. And you know what's very interesting about Mr. Denzel Washington? He played Malcolm X. Do you guys remember this? He played in a movie like this. And Spike Lee was being interviewed about the scene, and Spike Lee was explaining how Denzel Washington was acting, and he was sitting there going through the script, and he was like just nailing, they were very historically correct of what Malcolm X said. They have huge chunks of his actual speeches. They put it into the movie, and Denzel Washington was saying during one of the scenes the whole entire speech, and then all of a sudden he kept going. And Spike Lee is sitting there looking at the script. There's nothing more on the script. And he's saying word for word of the speech that Malcolm X said. And Spike Lee's just sitting there going, there's nothing else on the script. And he's looking at him like this. And he walks up to Mr. Denzel Washington. And afterwards he goes, Mr. Washington, that was amazing. How did you do that? And he was like, do what? And he's like, you said Malcolm X's whole speech, word for word. And it's not on the script. And he's like, oh, I did? Brothers and sisters, if you understand the state of the dead, who is he using? I don't care if you are Mr. Christian, read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all day long. There are some very dangerous things that some of these people get involved in. And, they are messing with things on a whole nother level. You guys can look up, I think that was on YouTube that I found that clip if you wanted to watch Spike Lee's retelling of that. Did you know that Steve Jobs and Bill Gates severely limited the technology of their children? Did you know that? Did you know that when Steve Jobs was actually asked, when he came out with the iPad, so how are your kids enjoying the iPad? He responded to the person that was interviewing him. He said, my kid has never played with the iPad. And he was like, what? You made this amazing piece of technology. Your kid's not playing with it? And he says, no, he won't play with it. Isn't that interesting? What is it that these guys understood that they literally would not let their own children play with the technology? Yet we play with it all the day, all the time. They also send their kids to schools in Simi Valley where tech is severely limited or they actually can't use it at all. Here's the article with Steve Jobs saying that he doesn't let his kids use it. So there's a problem with social media. But I also don't want to just sit here and hammer social media. My ministry uses social media as well. And I'll tell you what, really honestly, I would not necessarily exist as a ministry in the capacity that we are without social media. People in Russia are watching our videos. And it's like, I've never even been to Russia. How is that even possible? People in all parts of the world watch what we're doing right now, all over the place. It's an awesome tool that people can use to share the gospel. But with the technology, there's a danger with it to use it selfishly. But some people can use it positively, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So those of you that raise your hand that you use Instagram, did you know that Instagram is actually, they have found that nearly 60% of people that use Instagram are highly prone to depression? Did you know this? You should look this up. 60%. This is not 6%. This is not 8%. This is 60. Now, if we had a pill today that literally said this pill will make you skinny, but it will also make you depressed, the FDA would make that pill illegal tomorrow. Does that make sense? Yet we hand these devices to our kids and say, here, play with this. It's literally handing a loaded gun to kids. So I want you guys, as a piece of homework, do a little investigation with Instagram. I'm going to show you just a few clips on how people use Instagram, because there is some reasons why people are struggling with depression because of their use of it. And this little video is going to illustrate how people actually use Instagram. So you guys notice anything about the use of that? What are people actually doing? They're only showing you what part of their life. The best part, right? And it's actually not even a complete picture. How many times does somebody post something that they're struggling in depression? Right? And you have no idea, because they're only showing you the happy moments. They're only showing you the highlight reel, the best parts. So you don't see all the time in between, the slow moments of life, the struggles, the things that happen to us that are not glorified things. So this study, you guys can look this information up, really talks about there's an actual real link to mental health and the use of social media. Because the more that people use that social media, the more depressed they actually become. They did a study as well where they actually took a bunch of females, and they said, we're going to give you two options. You can either look at another female that is more attractive than you, or that you think is more attractive than you, or you can look at a friend of yours or a family member. And then they wanted to study what that did to their mood. And every single time the female chose to look at somebody that was more beautiful than them, they felt depressed every single time. They were causing literally depression. And you know what's interesting about depressed people? Do you know what happens to addictive personalities or addictive people? They become depressed. Why? Because you come back to the lever and you post more. You see, you have to realize with social media, it's a content delivery system. Social media is literally claiming that they are a content system, but who is the employee of that system? You are. You are their employee. You are the one that actually posts all that stuff and gives them all that stuff. Without you, there would be no company in Facebook at all. And so, you know what the enemy of Facebook is? Does anybody know psychologically what the enemy of Facebook would be? Intimacy is the enemy of Facebook. Because when you are intimate with someone, when you have a girlfriend and you want to go out and spend time with them, go on long walks with them and hang out with them, are you looking at Facebook? No, you are not. In fact, your focus is on them. So if your focus is on Christ and Christ alone, and you spend all your spare moments on him, that is an enemy to Facebook. So you know what they do? There's a reason why all of those social media things have these little comments. You know how people comment on everything? And do you notice that most of the comments a lot of times can be negative? Do you know Twitter has 160 characters? Do you know why it has 160 characters? Is it because in our modern world we don't have enough technology to write more? Why would it only be 160 characters? Because you can send a text message that's this long. So why would Twitter limit it to only 160 characters? Because you know what it does? When you're in love with somebody, how do you describe you're in love with them? You ever written love letters to somebody? Do you write it in like okay, I should be careful here. Like letters? You have, pages and pages of how you describe how you like somebody. If you're angry with somebody, how do you describe it? Brah, brah, brah. Two sentences, right? By shortening and confounding the language, it creates frustration. Frustration creates posting. Posting then creates other comments, especially if you say something negative and it goes around in circles like this. It's a way for them to get you to post things. And so the system is designed like this. You guys can look at some of these psychological studies that are actually on there. This was the study with the women and asking them. I'm going to skip through a couple of these just for the sake of time. So there's 4 stresses of social media. Here's the first stress. Social media is a highlight reel. They're literally only showing people the best parts. But that's not really how life really is. In fact, when you get to know somebody, if you look at their social media account, they may look like the happiest person in the world. And then you go hang out with them and they're like, whoa, they're totally different than what they portrayed on their social media. They also, another one is social media, the liking becomes your currency. What I mean by that is your self-worth now becomes how many people liked my comment or liked my post or liked my photo. And if nobody likes my comments or nobody likes my photos, then they must not like me very much. Your currency then becomes how much people actually like or care what you are doing. And that is not a real reality. That is a false reality. The fear of missing out is a very real phobia that people have. When you have friends and you are looking at Instagram pictures of all your friends hanging out, having a good time, doing things, and you weren't invited to wherever they are, then you feel like, why didn't they invite me? I'm missing out on their life and on what they're doing. And this is a very real fear amongst teenagers these days. Cyberbullying and harassment is also another major problem that happens with social media. My niece was cyberbullied. She went to a new school in California out near San Francisco. And when she went to school, there was actually some girls that didn't like her. She was a cute girl, and they wanted to just let all the boys know that she's just whatever. And they started bullying her on social media. And she actually was just torn apart with it, didn't want to go to school there. This is a very real thing that a lot of kids actually deal with. I'm going to show you a little video clip here of some girls that went to a baseball game, and the cameraman that is watching the baseball game, he pans up into the crowd and he sees these girls all playing with their social media, and they start commenting on these girls. Listen to this.
And while there, maybe they'll tweet us their fan photo, BB. Now's the time, fans. Get on the Twitter with a hashtag of the whole thing, AZDataStrongFan, and you might see your fan photo at a Diamondback TV broadcast brought to you by T-Mobile. I mean, look at the one on the right.
Do you have to make faces when you take selfies?
Wait, one more now.
Oh, there you go.
Better angle. Oh, check it. Did that come out okay?
That's the best one of the 300 pictures I've taken of myself today.
Every girl in the picture is locked into her phone.
Oh, Lord.
Every single one is dialed in. Welcome to parenting in 2015. They're all just completely transfixed by the technology.
So they go back to the game, and then they keep cutting back to the girls in the crowd, and they're still doing this.
Take a selfie with the hot dog, selfie with the churro, selfie just of...
Selfie of a selfie, selfie this. This goes on for like 10 minutes. And they're like looking up in the crowd and they're just blown away at these girls aren't even watching the baseball game. Why would you pay for a ticket to go to the baseball game and then not even engage in the actual game? Right? Here's a problem. Sometimes when we hang out with our friends, we don't even engage with each other. We're so worried about getting the right picture and doing this that we lose the art of conversation back and forth with each other. This is a problem. Do you know that this is a happening party today? I mean, this thing's going off. Yeah. Right? We can't even sit in a room together for the most part and literally have a conversation with each other. You know, my wife and I like to go out on dates, date night all the time. And this is what we notice when we go out on date nights. Have you ever been to a restaurant and you've noticed this? Couples that are sitting there not saying a word to each other. Sharing a meal and they're both just locked into their phones and they can't even have a conversation with the person in front of them because they're all focused on some exterior world. How about this? A lot of kids are being raised in this type of a world today where their parents are so locked into the technology that they can't even, get their parents' attention for 2 seconds. This is a reality. Time magazine actually started noticing this and they put this on the cover of the magazine. Help, my parents are millennials. What am I going to do? You see, I've been to grocery stores and I've seen those mothers that are pushing their carts down the thing and they're sitting there focused on their social media and the kids just crying behind, knocking stuff off the shelf, and they're literally just locked out, not paying attention to them. Brothers and sisters, life is about relationships. Life is about contact. It's about learning how to have conversation with each other. And there is an art form that comes with a conversation with each other. Did you know that when you speak to somebody, you read so much more than words? You read body language, you read tones. How is that person speaking to me? How is their eye contact? How is their body language? All those things relay an information that you cannot get across in a simple text. So frustrated mothers have come up with a solution. And this solution is quite amazing. I would actually love this piece of technology. Maybe some of you will find this solution funny.
Okay guys, time for dinner.
Come help set the table.
Yeah. Love it. If this is a real product, I would love to get it. I have actually a rule in my house. I grew up in a family that was very much so big on a family meal. I was not allowed to go into the kitchen and get a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and eat it and run out the door. My family had 4-course meals literally every single day. And I'll tell you, when I got to high school, I was fighting it, kicking and screaming like, no, I just want to just go out with my friends. And my parents were like, nope, we need a family meal together. And I'll tell you what, when I look back on my childhood today, the best memories that I have center around our dinner table. And I loved that conversation. And in today's world, I've spent time in people's homes where their kids are engaged with social media. They aren't even engaging with the parents or anything around the table. Brothers and sisters, this is a problem. Learn to have no technology during a dinner time. And I'm telling you guys this, you're young enough now, but trust me, when you have kids, you're going to have to confront this at some point in time. So I have a rule. If you call me during dinner time, guess what? I will not answer the phone. I don't care how important that conversation is. My phone is not at my dinner table. Because A, I want to model it to my children, but B, that's also a very special time for me. So here's some solutions I'm going to give you guys. A lot of kids, I live near Southern, and I went out to eat at a restaurant, and a bunch of kids came into the restaurant, and literally they sat around playing on their phones the whole time, and my wife and I were like, wow, I can't believe, why would you even come to the restaurant? They're not even engaging with each other. So here's a solution for this. If you have a phone, take it out, put it on the table, everybody stack their phones on the table, and the first person to grab the phone has to pay the bill. You better want to answer that text message because it's going to cost you a little bit of money. There's also a thing that's very interesting. I notice when I speak with youth groups, especially young teenagers, I have not noticed it with your group. I'm actually really impressed by this because the speaker can see what the audience is doing. I spoke at Southern recently, and I'm kind of calling Southern out on the carpet here, and I probably shouldn't be. But I was looking out over the audience, and I think it was the first time in my life that more than 60% of the audience wasn't listening to a word I said. And literally, sometimes we would show video clips. They would do this. They would be playing with their phones like this. Video clip would come on. They'd watch the video clip, then they'd go right back down to their phone. Like this, right? But this was the first time that I'd ever seen. I could play video clip after video clip after video clip, and they were literally not paying attention at all. So I stopped the presentation, and I just started walking around in amongst the audience. That's the level of distraction that these things have. So I'm telling you this because when you come to church, you can read the Bible from your phone, okay? I'm not against that at all. It'd be better if you read the Bible from, sorry. There we go. So you can read the Bible from your phone, but I encourage you, bring your Bible to church, turn your phone off or put it on airplane mode, just so that God has a special message for you during a divine service. Don't be distracted. Because once you start having to communicate with somebody, it could be 10 texts and you may miss something that you may not want to miss. Here's another creative way. I have a friend, I'm not going to name his name, he speaks for the GYC all the time. And when he began in his ministry, he barely had enough money to pay his bills. And this is a really awesome kid. You guys, if you've ever seen GYC talks, you've probably seen this kid before. And he's literally pushing his cart in the grocery store one day. He doesn't have enough money to even pay his bill, and he's just angry. God, why? I'm doing all I can to serve you, and I can't even pay my car payment. Why? And he's just angry. And literally his phone buzzes, and he pulls it out, and it's a text message from another friend of his. And it says, hey, I just came across this awesome Bible verse. I was thinking of you, don't know why I needed to send this to you. Here it is. And it was exactly what he needed at the moment. Did you know that your phone can be a ministry opportunity? If you don't see someone at church, how many times have you texted, hey, I didn't see you at church today. Is everything okay? Can I bring you something? Are you sick? How about using the technology in a positive manner? Another thing too, I love technology. As you can notice, I do not have an Apple Watch. I'm still trying to find a good reason to convince my wife to let me have one. I've tried every angle in the book and she says no. So I'm not opposed to technology. I love technology. But have you ever been talking to somebody who has a smart watch and they do this in the middle of your conversation, right? And what does that make you feel like psychologically? Oh, you have somewhere better to go. then I should stop because you need to go somewhere. And they may not be trying to be rude, they're just answering an email. So be conscientious of that. Don't make other people feel like you don't like their conversation because you're always worried about looking at what it is. We're running out of time, so I'm going to get to kind of the end of this here. I want to talk about YouTube. How many of you like YouTube? Oh my goodness, I love YouTube. Obsessed with YouTube. That's just my struggle, I'll be honest. I love YouTube. I watch mostly other ministry videos and things like this, but you can spend a lot of time wasting on YouTube. You get on there for a ministry video, and before you know it, you're watching how to change your tire on your car, right? 300 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every single minute. That's an incredible amount. 3.5 billion hours are watched every single month. The average that everybody watches is about 40 minutes. Did you realize that in every 60 days, YouTube creates enough content that the top 4, NBC, CBS, ABC, and I can't remember the other one, the top 4 media production companies that we have in our world, it took them 60 years to produce, and YouTube creates that kind of content every 60 days. That's how much content is on YouTube. It's mind-boggling. What do you think is the most watched thing on YouTube? I'll take a guess. What do you think? No. Music videos. Can you name the top most watched music video? What? I heard it. Despacito. So here you go. Here is the list of the top most watched YouTube videos. So you have almost 6 billion, and I took this, I don't think there's a date on here, but I took this not too long ago, 6 billion views. But I want you to notice something. Look at these names that are on this list, okay? So look at these names. You have Justin Bieber, Maroon 5, Taylor Swift, Katy Perry, One Republic, Katy Perry, Taylor Swift. What is everybody watching? Music videos. Has anybody here seen a Justin Bieber video? No. Music video? No? Awesome. Did you watch it because it popped up in the little sidebar? Anybody ever seen a music video just because it popped up in the sidebar and you were curious about it? Be careful, because there's a lot of music videos that have terrible things in them. I do not suggest watching Despacito at all. There's totally terrible things in there. But that's the kind of thing that you need to be careful of. When you watch YouTube, YouTube is not 100% righteousness safe. Does that make sense? So be careful of even YouTube. You can watch a lot of things that you shouldn't be watching. I'm going to leave you with this. Ephesians 5:15 through 17 says, "See then that you walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as the wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. Therefore, do not be unwise, but let us understand what the will of the Lord is." I don't believe we have time to waste in today's world. When you get to heaven, I don't believe that you're going to say, "Wow, I'm so glad that I spent X amount of time scrolling through everybody's Facebook." I don't think anyone is ever going to say that. And so quickly you can waste an hour of time just scrolling through, reading what everybody's doing. Learn to use your time wisely. I don't want to leave you with Facebook is totally 100% evil. Just be cautious with it. There's a lot of research that's starting to come out that it's dangerously addictive. They designed it like that. Look into that and learn to do some research. If you're going to involve yourself in it, then you yourself do a little bit of research, because I believe Jesus is coming soon and we do not have time to waste on frivolous things. So let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this Sabbath day. The things that we've been able to learn today, and the conversations that we've been able to have, and the fellowship and the music. And Lord, it's been a beautiful high Sabbath, and I just thank you so much for it. As we close down the Sabbath and we engage in another week, Lord, may we recommit our hearts and our lives to you. May all these little devices that we have in our lives that are constantly distracting us or even potentially making us selfish, or the use of how we use them selfish, I just pray, Lord, that you can re-educate us and re-teach us how to actually use it to witness to other people, to reach out to our friends in a positive manner, and to not get caught up in the distraction of it. I thank you for this opportunity, and we love you. In Jesus' name, amen. I have 2 announcements real quick before you guys go. There's a group that was to either prepare the kitchen or clean the kitchen, can't remember which one. Both need to go to the kitchen right after this. So as quickly as possible, if you guys could go, I'm super hungry and need food. No, I'm just kidding. But if you could, just go to the kitchen right after this meeting and you are able to go to work. And then also, some of you have asked about DVDs. I only brought a handful of DVDs on a variety of topics, a lot of topics that I didn't cover here, some that I did cover here. I will have them available after tonight's meeting if any of you would like to share them. And one more thing, we do have a YouTube channel. Please subscribe, like. Have a good night.